You need to stop using pace as your #1 source of data when you're running. Give me 3 sessions to make my case. The road, track,
the treadmill. So let's start here. Have a look at these video clips of elite level runners across all distances. What do you notice?
Look more closely. A lot of them aren't even wearing watches, they're racing to feel, and that's the gold standard we should be moving towards. And when we start running, it's also best to run on feel, just to stop you from getting overwhelmed, too much data. Just run easy or medium or hard.
So, can you get from beginner level feel to elite level feel by training just on feel? No, I don't think you can. I think there are 2 other metrics.
Can you get from beginner level feel to elite level feel using pace? No, not alone. Feel requires knowing what's happening internally, not just externally.
So the question really should be, how do you get from that beginner level of feel to the elite level of feel? And it's all about context. As in, you really need to know what's going on the inside before you can make that leap. Yes, you do need a few bits beforehand, but I've got you covered on that one. So if you do use pace as your #1 way of measuring your runs, let me try and convince you that there could well be a better way.
And the first of the 3 sessions is going to the track. Okay, so this is how it's going to go today. Luckily it's raining, so there's not many people here. We're going to go to the track, and today I'm going to talk about heart rate. I'm just going to train on heart rate, talk about that. Tomorrow I've got a session where I'm just going to run easy, so we're going to talk about feel, and then on Thursday I'm hitting the treadmill, and you guessed it, training on pace, and we're going to pick them apart, pros and cons of each. Okay, session today, we're doing kilometer repeats but at tempo heart rate. So usually we would come, if we were in marathon training, we would come to this track and we would do stuff like kilometer repeats, 1200s, 800s, but at threshold. Today it's all about tempo because we're not in marathon training and we're just trying to remind our body what even anything above easy is. But obviously we're dialing in on feel as well.
So let's just add some caveats to this before we get going. The caveats with heart rate training, there's 2. One of them, these wrist straps, I don't find them particularly reliable. I don't think that they're a good thing to use as if you're using heart rate as a metric. What's the word? They're like just too flighty. And the second caveat is that none of it matters if you don't know your own heart rate zones, if they're not personalized. So don't trust what your watch tells you. Don't trust what Strava tells you. Don't trust what anything tells you other than you doing some testing, right? So that could be a lab test to lactate threshold, or it could be a field test where you do a heart rate test. I'll link a video here, but as long as the zones are your own, then you can crack on with heart rate training. Otherwise, really, a bit of a waste of time. So tempo session as it is today, the aim is to try to dial into more of a feel, so 7.5, 8 out of 10. But at the same time, I wouldn't say I'm shackling that, but I'm monitoring it by looking at my heart rate, just making sure that those 2 link up, because, you know, I could aim for 7.5, 8 out of 10, but my heart rate is pushing me into threshold, and that's a completely different session. Whew, okay, that was a great effort. So, the thing about these tempo sessions is, if I had have shackled myself by giving myself a pace rather than a heart rate, and I think, you know, I'm kind of conservative as a runner, so probably would have told myself maybe 4 minutes a kilometre in this heat might be tempo. I'd have been doing a completely different session. I'd been doing zone 2. I'd have been doing essentially not the same session as I am now if I focused on pace first and just followed that blindly. So I'm very happy I'm dialing into heart rate and feel. I need to maybe dial it back for this 1 rep, but yeah, it's going well. How are you going?
Yeah, good, yeah. Legs are tired, but it's good to be back.
Yeah.
All right, session done. And this is what I really like about heart rate training above everything else, is that is what I had on the day. That was my tempo right there, that heart rate. It wasn't a pace. Next week it could be completely different. That's the whole point. You know, that pace today could be faster next week, it could be slower. It's really pure. It's like a snapshot of where I'm at right now in my heart rate. If I'd have picked pace, then quite easily could have been completely off. I could have been too fast, too slow, doing a different session. That's exactly why I need heart rate in my life, and then I tie it to the feel and I get stronger and stronger when it comes to racing on feel. And it's do you know what, it's not like heart rate doesn't have its drawbacks. It does. There is a lag, so when you're doing short reps on this track, you know, it takes a while to get up to speed, and it's also a little bit susceptible to things like stress, heat, dehydration, but see ya, bye. But these are kind of minor things in my mind. In the scheme of things, you learn how to work around them on feel. It is day 2, and that means today we run on feel. Okay, the plan for this one is very, very simple. It is 10 kilometers, easy, based on feel. I will just say that generally running to feel in easy runs is not the issue. It's not really usually a problem. Maybe a little bit more in the early days when you don't know what easy is in terms of what your aerobic base zones are, but generally this is not the issue. Not here. We're halfway on our run. Look at this. It is beautiful. And I'm glad we're doing it on feel. There's no pressure of pace, there's no pressure of heart rate. I mean, feel is the central, kind of runs everything. It's a real feel of what's happening in terms of heat, in terms of elevation, in terms of your work stress, in terms of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, but you do need context.
Yes. Yep. Context is everything. So let's take this run as a good example. This might feel easy, but if I didn't check there, perhaps I'd be doing a different thing physiologically. Perhaps I'd be above my aerobic base zones, which is not what I want from an easy run. You can get away with that in the early days when you're a beginner, but less so when you need a lot of easy miles later on. And conversely, I could be out on a run and feel absolutely terrible, but actually my pace could be fine or even faster than it usually is. Again, it's that context. Ultimately, what I try and do is build up a bank of knowledge, a library, if you like, of different scenarios, factoring in feel, heart rate and pace. So on any given day, I know what's going on in all three, which will allow me to run to feel. So let's take this run as a good example of building my library. It's a 10 kilometers. It's easy, relatively speaking, because we're in Thailand, about mid 30 degrees, and it's flat. So in my bank, I look at what my heart rate's doing in that scenario. I look at what my pace is doing in that scenario. I just take note and I move on. If I was running on the track to heart rate, I'd look at what my pace is and I'd kind of measure what the feel is. Or if I was on the treadmill, looking at pace, I'd think about the feel and I'd look at my heart rate. It's kind of like a triumvirate, all three working in unison so that you get good with feel. How are you feeling?
Hot,
Yeah.
but good.
Okay, heart rate?
Just holding on in zone 2 because of the heat.
Oh, I didn't stop my watch.
Definitely keeping it easy though.
Yeah, that's the point to all of this, is feel isn't built over days or weeks or even months. It is a process of multiple years, you could argue a lifetime. But while we can't be elite runners necessarily, we can develop elite feel, and that means something. Okay, final session, and it's a session based on pace on the treadmill. And you might wonder, why does Ben hate pace so much? The honest answer is I don't, but I do stand by the fact I think it's the metric that you should rely on the least, because it's purely external, as in it's outside, it's not what's happening on the inside. So if pace is external and feel is a balance between internal, what's going on in there, and the external, and heart rate is internal, then you start to see why I don't like relying on the external. Let me pose you this question before we start. You tell me to go on an easy run, 5 minutes a kilometre. Is that the same easy run if I'm going out and it's hilly or if it's flat? 5 minutes a kilometre can quite quickly be a completely different run depending on the elevation, the heat, the everything outside, right? It would make more sense in my head, of course, if you told me to go out on an easy run and stick within these heart rate parameters, like don't go above here. That's a better way of managing my run as far as I'm concerned. So before I get this session going, let's talk about the drawbacks, or at least one of the drawbacks that I see with training to pace. It's using my own situation. My aim for Chicago is to run a 2:39, which means I've got to run a 3:45 minutes per kilometre through the race. Am I capable of that right now? Not likely, certainly not without going near threshold generally. So how do I know what pace to run right now? Well, a coach, an app, it would be your best guess, it would be a guesstimate. So I'm gonna play around at some different paces. But the honest truth is, I don't know whether to aim for 4 minutes a kilometre, 3:45, 3:30, somewhere in between. I don't know what that's gonna do to my body and my heart rate internally, and that's the difficulty with pace. It is pretty much always a best guess scenario. So whilst I know if I was doing this session to heart rate, I would just try to dial into about 169 to 173 beats per minute, because I know that's around middle of zone 3, what I want to dial into as tempo. I'm actually going to do an experiment. I'm going to run a 4 minute kilometre, a 3:45 and a 3:30, because I don't know which one is going to get me nearest to tempo. Dial into a nice 5 minute kilometre first. Just nice and easy, couple of kilometres warm up before I actually go for it. Okay, we're going in. This kilometre here, in about 100 metres, is going to be 4 minutes per kilometre, so that's 15 kilometres an hour on the treadmill. Is that my tempo? I know it's kind of cheating a little bit, because I did do a tempo session by heart rate on Tuesday, but you know, just go with me. Different conditions, different day, inside on a treadmill, not outside on a track. Okay, we're off. So if I was relying on feel alone, I'd be wondering if this is above tempo. I'm looking at heart rate, and it's way below tempo. Maybe not dialing this in just yet. Still in zone 2, but working hard. Oh, okay. Actually, as hard as that felt, it wasn't even top of zone 2. So let's go, let's try 3:45 after an easy jog in between. Okay, 30 metres and I'm going for it again, this time 16 kilometres an hour, 3:45 a kilometre. Goal marathon pace, but is it tempo? Okay.
So this effort is what I want my marathon pace to eventually be, and I want it to be mainly zone 2, but today I expect it to be zone 3 because my fitness is lower. It's still a guess whether this pace is going to get me to mid-zone 3.
I've got to be honest, if I thought this is my marathon pace right now, I'd want to cry. But it is.
Pace can't account for a stressful day or a hot room where the AC doesn't work or illness and so on. It's like a moving target, which is what makes it so flawed as an overall metric to solely, and note I'm saying solely, rely on.
Okay, we've just tipped to the top of zone 2 with 400 metres to go. Literally last beat in zone 2, which I suppose is quite encouraging, but the feel, whoa. The feel is much harder.
Heart rate as an alternative is pure. How can it be demotivational to run to a heart rate and feel? That's where your body is that day. Sometimes a 180 beat per minute heart rate for me is 3:25 a kilometre, and sometimes it's 3:40. But I tell you what it is, it's always threshold. That's much more pure. I know I'm at threshold.
That was 1 kilometre at goal marathon pace. Heart rate got to 170, so just touching into tempo. Wouldn't have been able to sustain that though. And one of the other things that I've learned about training to pace over the years, when you coach people who have come from pace to heart rate, is their feedback generally is that, you know, it can cause anxiety if you give them a pace that maybe they're uncertain of or maybe they can't hit yet. If they hit it, great, it's great. But if they don't, which can happen, it's quite demotivating, it's quite kind of deflates you. But if I tell someone to go out and run to a feel and try and push to a heart rate, different, pace takes care of itself. The heart rate is what it is on any given day. Trying to hit paces is an educated guess at best. In my opinion, an app can't do it, a coach can't do it, they can get in the ballpark, but is that good enough? So when do I use pace? Because as I said, I still use it. I use pace in the second half of a marathon training block. If we train for 18 weeks, probably the first 10 weeks is tempo sessions, building up my tolerance to middle of zone 3, building up my tolerance to controlled suffering. Second half of the block, we'll move into marathon pace work, where I'll work towards my goal time for the marathon, which in this case 3:45 per kilometre. And you know what I'll have a good idea of by the time I get to the taper is whether that goal time is realistic or not, because I'll also know what my feel says and I'll know what my heart rate data says. There's a theme here, isn't there?
Alright, what am I really saying? Let's get down to it. Look at this. Feel's the top of the tree, and it should be. It should be the gold standard, but you can't get here, as we've said, by training on feel alone. So you have to add some other metrics like pace. But even then, using pace and feel together, you are not going to get good at feel necessarily. And this is where apps like Runner, Cooper, Garmin, that's where they sit. Although I'm pretty sure and hopeful heart rate is starting to be used, but it wasn't originally. Because this is external and this is your feeling of what's internal, but it's not necessarily knowing what's happening internally. Can you make progress using feel and heart rate? 100% you can, I do. This is pretty much how I train, predominantly at least, because you have the balance of the external and the internal, what's literally happening. The feeling that you think you might be at threshold is not as powerful as the knowing that you are at threshold. But you know what's more powerful than all of that? The triangle, connecting it. Now, when we train with heart rate, when we train with feel, and when we train with pace, we become almost unstoppable in the long term. But going back to the start of this video, my argument is if pace is your #1 primary metric, that's where we've got the problem. Not if you use pace at all, because I use pace. It's just if you use pace, which is only external, without an appreciation of what you're feeling inside and what's actually happening inside. And there is the problem of a lot of the AI apps and a lot of these plans that give you paces to run without the appreciation of what that physically means for you. Now we're there. If you disagree with it, if you want to discuss in the comments, I'm here. Keep it above the belt. Everyone's entitled to their opinion and I welcome it. And if you liked this video, you're definitely also going to like this video, which is where I share the 6 biggest decisions that can stop progress immediately and how to not make them. Don't forget to get subscribed. I'm going to be using this system to train for 239 in Chicago this year. Cannot wait. Join us on the journey. See you next week.